In 1994, an archaeologist in southern Turkey began excavating a site that would change everything we thought we knew about human history. What he found was a monumental temple complex built 12,000 years ago by hunter-gatherers. That is 7,000 years before Stonehenge, 7,000 years before the pyramids, and 7,000 years before writing. It was built by people who, according to everything we knew, should absolutely not have been capable of building it. Welcome to this explainer on the truly impossible reality of Göbekli Tepe. To really grasp the magnitude of this place, you've kind of got to wrap your head around the sheer impossibility of what was actually found there. When German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt started digging in southeastern Turkey, he didn't just find a few old stone tools or a fire pit. No, he unearthed a sprawling, complex, monumental sanctuary. We are literally talking about a civilization of prehistoric forgers, people who hadn't even invented pottery yet, somehow constructing something of just mind-boggling scale. Let's put this into perspective, because the timeline is crazy. Gobekli Tepe was built roughly 12,000 years ago. That is a massive, almost unfathomable 7,000-year gap before the invention of writing. It's 7,000 years older than Stonehenge, 7,000 years older than the Great Pyramids of Giza. Just think about this. There is more time between the builders of Gobekli Tepe and the ancient Sumerians than there is between the Sumerians and us today. It is truly astonishing. Moving into Section 1, the site and its discovery, unearthing the past. What's absolutely wild is how this incredible place was almost completely lost to history. It was actually first surveyed back in the 1960s by researchers from the University of Chicago, but they totally dismissed it. They saw some broken limestone slabs on the surface and just assumed it was an abandoned medieval cemetery. It wasn't until 1994 that Klaus Schmidt actually visited the site. He looked at the gently rounded top of this 50-foot mound, which by the way translates to Belly Hill, and he instantly recognized it was unnatural. He knew right away. With a sense of quiet awe, he remarked, "Only man could have created something like this." And what his team actually pulled out of the earth? Well, it wasn't just rough blocks of stone. They found these massive, T-shaped limestone pillars, perfectly arranged in circular enclosures. But here's where it gets spooky. When you look closely at the details, they aren't just blocks. They're actually highly stylized anthropomorphic statues. You can see intricately carved human arms and hands resting on a bilt, complete with a loincloth. These pillars are meant to represent giant, faceless humanoids, or perhaps even gods. And the scale? It's simply staggering. The central pillars stand over 5 meters tall and weigh up to 15 tons. Now remember, these were erected by people who did not possess metal tools. They didn't have beasts of burden. They literally didn't even have the wheel yet. They carved, transported, and stood up these 15-ton megaliths using absolutely nothing but stone tools, human muscle, and just unimaginable coordination. Which brings us to Section 2, overturning the standard model, flipping history. This single hilltop completely shredded our existing timeline of human social evolution. For decades, the standard model of civilization was pretty simple. Humanity learned to farm, farming allowed us to settle down, and that settling gave us the free time and surplus resources to build temples and develop complex religions. Well, Gobekli Tepe flips that entire model upside down. It proves that the urge to worship, the effort to build temples, and those huge sociocultural changes actually came first. The monumental effort required to build this place likely forced these hunter-gatherers to settle down, which subsequently led to agriculture. Religion sparked civilization, not the other way around. So this also means these builders were not just small, simple, egalitarian bands of forgers roaming the plains, like we used to think. Researchers now categorize the culture around Gobekli Tepe as a status society, meaning they actually had a complex hierarchical social order. But because they didn't have hoarded wealth or an agricultural surplus yet, this hierarchy was based on ideological prestige, complex mythologies, and monopolized knowledge. Some individuals held elevated status simply because they were the keepers of the community's spiritual or cosmic truths. Power came from what you knew, not what you owned. How fascinating is that? Now onto Section 3, the Vulture Stone Mystery, Pictogram of the Past. To try and understand those cosmic truths, we really have to look at the most controversial artifact on the entire site, Pillar 43, which is famously known as the Vulture Stone. It is heavily adorned with these deep, high-relief carvings. If you look closely, you can see vultures with outstretched wings, a scorpion, a mysterious headless man down at the bottom, and a strange circular disc. This isn't just random decoration, guys. It's a dense, highly deliberate visual narrative. Some people have even called it the world's first pictogram. But what on earth is it trying to say? Well, there are two main schools of thought here, and honestly, both are fascinating. The first is a highly provocative archaeoastronomy hypothesis. A team of researchers proposed that these carvings actually represent constellations in the night sky. They match the carved scorpion to the Scorpius constellation, the vulture to Sagittarius, and so on. They argue this pillar acts as a literal celestial date stamp, recording a devastating comet impact that triggered a sudden global cooling period known as the Younger Dryas, roughly 12,000 years ago. However, I should mention that the comet hypothesis is heavily debated. The mainstream archaeological view offers a totally different, though equally profound, interpretation. They view Pillar 43 as a depiction of excarnation and mortuary practices. You see, in many ancient cultures, vultures were viewed as eerie agents of death who carried the flesh of the deceased up into the heavens. The presence of the headless man, along with all the aggressive, menacing animal symbols found throughout the site, strongly suggest that this was a place deeply, deeply connected to death rituals, navigating the underworld and early ancestor veneration. Let's look at Section 4, the deliberate burial, hidden by its creators. As if the construction wasn't mysterious enough, the way Gobekli Tepe's story ends is just as astonishing. It wasn't destroyed by invading armies, and it wasn't just simply abandoned to the elements. Nope. Around 8000 BCE, this incredible 9-hectare sanctuary was deliberately, painstakingly buried under tons of earth and refuse by its own creators. I mean, why? Why would a society spend centuries building a monumental complex only to just bury it? Theories range from a gradual societal transformation, making the site obsolete, to profound shifts in their spiritual belief systems. Some even wonder if it was an act of intentional preservation, literally sealing their sacred knowledge away for the future. This leads us right into Section 5, the agriculture origin theory, feeding the builders. The actual answer to why they buried it might lie in how they managed to survive while building it in the first place. Think about it. To carve and move 15-ton pillars, you need hundreds of workers. And gathering that many hungry foragers in one place, that is an ancient logistical nightmare. Suddenly, you face a huge crisis. How exactly do you cater a 12,000-year-old construction site? The prevailing theory is that the sheer necessity of sustaining the workforce at Göbekli Tepe acted as the ultimate catalyst for human beings to innovate. They had to figure out how to domesticate wild wheat and herd animals. Basically, the temple built the farm. And once farming took hold, the old hunter-gatherer ways and the need for this massive sanctuary just slowly faded away. Finally, Section 6, 3 open questions, enigmas in stone. Despite decades of continuous excavation, we've honestly barely scratched the surface of the Belly Hill. We are still left looking at these stones with several profound enigmas remaining. First, what is the exact true meaning behind the predominantly aggressive male animal symbolism? Second, since recent excavations show hints of domestic structures, were these purely isolated ritual temples, or were they actually the center of a much more complex, permanent settlement? And third, what was the definitive, final trigger that caused them to bury their greatest achievement forever? There is so much of human prehistory still waiting to be deciphered in that limestone. The gulf between us and them is incredibly vast, yet they left us a message in stone that has completely rewritten our origins. So I'll leave you with this to ponder. Does Gobekli Tepe change how you think about what ancient humans were capable of? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the unknown.